Good afternoon. Can I understand it? I think if you were Ivan Toney's representatives, you'd have probably thought there'd have been a couple of top Premier League clubs that would have come in for him. And they were probably caught out a bit surprised by maybe not the initial interest that he'd have liked. So then you just weigh up your options, and probably from a financial point of view, Saudi's obviously one where they've offered him vast amounts of money. He's only got a year left in his contract, so Brentford probably thought this is a good opportunity. I think £40 million is being spoken about as the fee, which is really good money since it's someone that's only got 1 year left. So in that respect, I can understand it. I would like to see him play in the Premier League. He's obviously been played in the Euros, has so many different qualities, but he probably feels like this time in his career, 28, 29 is he, I think, he's probably thinking this is the most viable option. He can always come back to the Premier League in a year or so and see how it goes over there. But I still think when there's a dearth of number nines. I know you've got Paul Merson in the studio. There's not many number nines that can do what he can do. So I'm a bit surprised that nobody has decided to take him. You are guaranteed goals, penalties, things like that. He will bring lots to the equation. So I am surprised that no Premier League clubs have decided to take him. What might work against him, I think, was probably when he came back after the ban, he didn't score the amount of goals that we all expect him to score. And that might be why, I think if he'd have come and scored 11, 12 goals in that period or however, I think had 18 games and really been on fire, I think someone might have taken a real chance and thought, well, this is still worth the money. But for that reason, it seems like nobody's decided, and that's why he's obviously going to go to Saudi now.
It looked like Chelsea were perhaps going to take that chance. Of course, you can't rule out anything on deadline day. There is still just less than 8 hours left. So this one not confirmed yet. But obviously, we know Chelsea in for Osimhen as well. Who do you think would have been or would be a better fit at Chelsea, Toney or Osimhen?
Both of them. I think Osimhen is obviously one that I would like to see in the Premier League. He was fantastic for Napoli, certainly a couple of years ago when they won the league. He was unstoppable. There's lots of different possibilities when you play with someone like him. An out-and-out number 9, great in the air, good into feet. He would be good for the Premier League, but it feels like nothing has quite transpired there. It's quite a difficult club, obviously, with Napoli trying to get him in and the money that they want for him. But I would like to see him certainly come. But with Chelsea, you just don't know. I mean, they've got Jackson there, who's obviously a number 9 that can. It's just whether they can. It feels like they haven't quite got the trust in him. They want to bring in another 9 just in case to take the workload off him. He'll always get you goals. There's no doubt about that. It's just the amount of goals that obviously Chelsea want as a number 9, and just to have a little bit of backup in case there are any problems there. But I would love to see Osimhen in the Premier League. I think he'd be perfect for it. All his qualities would be just ideal.
Let's stick with Chelsea as well, because obviously we know a couple of players, they're wanting to move on. Raheem Sterling, Ben Chilwell, their futures still need to be resolved. What have you made of that situation and the way they've treated the situation with these players?
It's a difficult one. When they've got so many players at Chelsea, obviously you feel sorry for some of the players when they just want to obviously play. There's been things that have done that I didn't agree with. I didn't like what obviously happened with Raheem Sterling on the match day when he put out the request or a statement from his team. I thought that was inappropriate, not on. Just have to get on with it. If you want to do something on the Monday morning, that's fine, but not when your teammates are about to play. But when you've got so many players, you're not going to keep everyone happy. And that's the predicament that they have, or they have created. And there are too many players. Like I've heard today, Jadon Sancho's had a mention. I mean, have they not got enough wide men in that area? Madueke's just got an England squad. You've got Neto, you've got Mudryk, and the list goes on. So why do you need to bring in another wide man and just give yourself another problem for the manager? They've got so many players that they're trying to work with. I just don't know how on earth you're going to keep everybody happy. And a lot of players. Now, the game has changed so much. I like to think there was always a few players that were, that were maybe looking at the money and just making sure they can take care of their families now. But I feel that we've got to the point where players are probably just going to go, I've got 3 years left on my contract. Why on earth am I going to cause myself a problem, maybe go to a league I don't want to go to? I'll just stay here and sit out on my 200 grand a week. You cannot force a player to leave. And that's the predicament that they have. Because some players will be there, obviously, it's just in them to want to play football. Others will just go, no problem. You just pay me week in, week out. I'll just sit on the bench or just train, because you're asking players to maybe go and train and making sure that they can come at a different time to the rest of the squad. It just doesn't bode for a great atmosphere. It doesn't help with the academy if you're asking the players, if you're asking a first team player, and if his attitude isn't right and he goes into the academy and he's not training at the same intensity or a good intensity, what does that do to the academy players? Because they're looking and going, well, OK, well, he's doing that and he's a seasoned professional. That can't be the way to certainly behave yourself. So there are so many different aspects of this which I find so uncomfortable. They've got too many players. They have to sort out. They have to trim the squad. And this is becoming more of a financial thing rather than actually what's best for the Chelsea Football Club and all the team and certainly the manager. This is his first big job and I think they're making it extremely hard for him.
And from a player's perspective, Jamie, the likes of Raheem Sterling, do you feel for him on a day like today when he perhaps doesn't know where he's going to be going tomorrow?
No, I can't say I feel for him. I mean, it's Raheem. I think if we're honest, and since he's been at Chelsea, he hasn't performed as well as what he likes. I'm sure he's the first one to admit that. So I think when you say you feel sorry for players, it becomes quite difficult. I mean, there are situations where Ben Chilwell and Raheem Sterling, they've just got to get on with it. And if they want to move, as it works out, if they really want to go away, maybe they could say, look, OK, I'll go to another club, but I'll take a reduction in my wages, which of course they're not going to do if they're that desperate to play. So I can't say I have too much sympathy for them. I didn't have sympathy for Raheem when he said what he said. Some players or ex-players came out and said, oh, I feel really sorry for him. I personally, you've signed a long-term contract. If you want to fight for your position or whatever it may be, you've got to train well, play better, and that's how you get into the first team squad. They've decided to trim the squad. I feel sorry for the manager, more importantly, because he's the one that's got to try and keep everybody happy, and that's pretty much an impossible job right now.
Yeah, so Chelsea have been really busy. In contrast, one of your former sides, Liverpool, fans perhaps largely disappointed with the lack of activity that's been going on there in terms of the transfer window. But Federico Chiesa bringing that one in yesterday, £12.5 million. We talk about these huge figures in transfer windows, but that seems like a bit of a bargain.
I'm sorry, you cut out for the vast majority of that question. Can you just give me a brief one on there again? Because I'm sorry about that, I couldn't hear you.
No worries. Federico Chiesa just moved on to Liverpool, £12.5 million. Yes. I mean, it seems like a bit of a bargain.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, absolutely. And I'm pleased I could hear the question now, because as a Liverpool fan, I'm delighted with this bit of business. It's a difficult one because he's obviously had a lot of injuries. But I think back to the Euros when they won it, Italy, and I'm actually, where I am now, I'm filming League of Their Own, and I was talking to Jorginho about him. He was on the show a couple of days ago and just said, from a Liverpool fan as a perspective, what do you think about him? He said he carried our Italian side for so long. He was amazing. He's obviously had injuries, but if Liverpool can get him back to fitness and make sure they manage his minutes carefully, they've got an absolute bargain and a star. He's got amazing pace, and he just gives you another great option. They've already, Salah, Diaz, Nunez, Jota. They've got lots of good players in that area that can change the game, and you just added another one to it. I'm really excited by this piece of business. I think it's smart. It's not going to cost you too much money. You can see already in his social media, he's delighted to come to the club. He's got great pedigree. I'm really excited by this move. It feels like it's one that's really been well organised. Of course, Liverpool are searching for a number 6. All the fans are dying for somebody to come in and fill that Rodri role. But we all know that Rodri is a unicorn. You can't find people like him. They're just so difficult. And Gravenberch has been really good in these other games. But what they're going to do now is just give themselves options off the bench or even starting. That's just going to be so good from a goal scoring and assist point of view. So I'm really excited by this signing.
Manchester United, they've done a bit of business, still looking to get Manuel Ugarte over the line. What have you made of what they've done? And is Ugarte quite an exciting prospect for United, do you think?
Yeah, he is. He's got that profile. He's very aggressive. He's, what they probably need. Casemiro last year obviously was a huge disappointment, and he'll just make sure that they give him. I wasn't sure what was going to happen with Casemiro. Just had that feeling at the end of the year that he wasn't going to be, end of the season, that he was going to still be a Manchester United player. He's come back. He has certainly looked fitter. And And that's what they need. But you also need players that are vying for their positions, and if you get them too comfortable. So with Ugarte coming in, I think if it can happen, obviously, which it looks like, he desperately wants to come to Manchester United. So he's going to be a really good signing. He's aggressive. He wins the ball back. You've got the feeling he's sort of made for the Premier League, because it's an area where they certainly need to strengthen. It's hard to find players in that mould, as we all know. So, and they've got a lot of good players around him. You know, Mainu is obviously a star in the making for many, many years to come. So he needs to see good players setting good examples in training. I'm not sure that's always been the case at Manchester United. So I think that's something that you want to make sure that you've got good people in the club. And he looks like the sort of type that you can build a bit of a team round. And, you know, he's certainly a winner.
Jamie, sometimes the stories on Deadline Day are about the players that actually stay put. What do you make of the news that it looks like Marc Guehi is going to be staying at Crystal Palace, not going to be going to Newcastle? How key is that for Palace to keep hold of him?
This is a really difficult one. Now, you asked me if I feel sorry for some players, you know, maybe Raheem Sterling. And Raheem has obviously had history with forcing moves out of clubs before. But I think if there is a way to behave, I like the way that he's done it, Marc Guehi, because it's not been easy for him. He knows the amount of money that's been offered would be life-changing. £65 million. Ivan Toney, as an example, hasn't played for Brentford this season. Now, Marc Guehi has got on with it. He's captained the side, put in. You know, obviously the results haven't been great for Crystal Palace as yet, but he has been a proper professional in my mind, and I think it will all come good for him anyway, you know, because he is such a good player and a top professional. So that's a hard one. Crystal Palace, from their perspective, obviously they lost Anderson, who went back to Fulham, so they had to. I did fear for Marc a little bit, and obviously, who knows, something can still happen. Stranger things have happened on transfer deadline day, as we all know. But I did feel when he went back to Fulham, that might cause a problem for that move. So he's just going to have to get on with it like he's got on with it so far. He hasn't caused a fuss, and it could have been easy for him to throw his toys out the pram and start complaining, but he hasn't. He's got on with it. So let's just see what happens. But it's in terms of his England career, lots to look forward to. He's still a very young man, and no doubt, I'm sure that Crystal Palace will look after him. And there might be some kind of dialogue where they say, look, give us another year, and then we won't stand in your way, because that's certainly happened in the past. And that's no disrespect to Crystal Palace. It's obviously a really good club. But I think there sometimes has to be a little bit of fairness when you have an opportunity to sort of go and to change your life, if you like, and get an opportunity to go and play for a club, especially the enormity of someone like Newcastle, or Liverpool even had a mention as well. So let's just see how this one plays out. But that's the different ways of doing things, I guess. And I, as I say, I do have a little bit of sympathy for Marc, but we'll have to just wait and see how it all plays out.